This summer has been hot for organized labor. Strikes have hit the media, entertainment, and airline industries, with UPS workers in the next group being the next group of workers threatening to walk off the job. Joining us right now for more is Seth Harris. He is a top former labor advisor to President Biden. He's currently a senior fellow at Northeastern's Burness Center for Social Change. And Scott Lincicome is vice president of general economics at the Cato Institute. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. Seth, why don't we start with you? Joe Biden has described himself as the most pro-union president ever. And there's a lot of turmoil out there right now. There have already been warnings and concerns about what happens not only with the strikes we just talked about, but also when it comes to the auto workers whose contract is up at the end of September. And there have been messages coming from the UAW and other places saying, stay out of this, don't get involved. If all of these crippling strikes come, what do you think the White House will do?
Oh, I think the White House will not get involved. They already are involved in the discussions between the UAW and the automakers. They're trying to help both sides understand both what the stakes are and what the public policy options are that are available to them. But the White House is not going to intervene, meaning they're not going to try and shut down the strikes. They're not going to try and get Congress involved. This is a private matter for private parties. This is a private dispute resolution system that we have in collective bargaining. The president very strongly supports collective bargaining and the labor movement. He wants workers to have a voice in their futures. And, you know, democracy can be ugly, and this is workplace democracy. These workers are exercising their worker power to improve the quality of their lives, raise wages, get better benefits, get rid of some unsafe and unhealthy working conditions, and to protect their futures. The president understands all that, so he's going to monitor it. He's going to encourage the parties to stay at the table and to negotiate, but ultimately it's going to be up to them to come to a resolution.
Scott, is that a recipe for some difficult views politically if all of these unions actually do go on strike when you're talking about an election that's only about 14, 15 months down the road?
Well, it certainly isn't going to be easy for the president because he's really walking a tightrope. If you see a general strike at UPS, I mean, you're talking about almost 30% of total shipments in the United States every day, tens of millions of packages. The economic impact could total in the billions of dollars if you see a work stoppage. And so for a president running on Bidenomics and the economy, that's a pretty tough pill to swallow and just stand on the sidelines. But, I agree with Seth that it's unlikely to see any direct intervention. Instead, it's more likely going to be working the phones behind the scenes. OK, so what are the odds, do you think, Seth, that working the lines behind the scenes, trying to bring everyone together, that it's successful? I mean, this was a president that did have to get a little involved when it came to the railroad strikers because that was seen as just too important to the nation's economy. Which of these strikes would be too important to the nation's economy? Would it be the UAW? Would it be the Teamsters Union when you start looking at yellow and some of the other discussions? What do you think?
Well, the railroad strike was a little bit different because there was a different law involved, and that law put the president right in the middle of the dispute. In these other industries, you don't have a law like that. So I'll offer some predictions, but let me just say as soon as they come out of my mouth, they're probably going to be obsolete. But my bet is that the Teamsters will not strike. And if they do strike, it'll just be for a few days. They are very close to a deal with UPS. They've gotten some of the biggest, thorniest issues out of the way. They got rid of the hated two-tier system. They've solved some heat hazard issues. They've gotten rid of forced overtime. It's really down to the economic issues there. And those are generally issues where you clearly understand what needs to be done in order to solve it. The UAW, on the other hand, I think that there is a heightened risk of a strike. I think that there's a great deal of unhappiness among the members at the UAW about the two-tiered system that was put in place there. We just heard a report on your air that the General Motors is making money hand over fist. They're going to have to come forward with a very generous proposal to the UAW's members in order to avoid a strike there. And of course, we already have two strikes going on in Hollywood right now. I think the studios absolutely blew it in those negotiations. They misunderstood what the actors and the writers wanted, and The offers that they made were just chintzy. They were inadequate. They're going to have to rethink what they're doing. They're going to have to figure out the competition in their industry. They're cutting each other's throats between the networks and the streaming services and others, and they're going to have to give a fair deal to those workers. Workers are active now. They are ready to strike, to fight for themselves. Corporate America is going to have to think differently about the way they deal with their workers.
Hey, Scott, I'll give the last word to you. What does this mean just in terms of inflationary pressures and things that we will be watching when it comes to the Fed and the broader economy on these issues?
Well, as important as these industries are, it's still critical to remember that we are still talking about a small sliver of the U.S. economy. Private sector unionization these days hit an all-time low in 2022. It's only about 6% of the workforce. And even the billions of dollars we're talking about, while important to the economy, are still a drop in the bucket in this $25 trillion economy. So, I don't expect, even if we saw a short strike, I don't expect that to have a massive effect on the economy. Little problems here and there, some problems for certain areas. But overall, I don't think it'll really register much on the radar.